Welcome to episode 13 of the Web3 Crypto and the Law podcast. Today we're talking all about DAOs, what they are, and some legal considerations and how to structure them. As always, this is not financial legal advice, it's strictly for entertainment purposes. With that, let's get started. So what are DAOs, how to structure them, some legal considerations. DAOs are to 2022 as NFTs were to 2021 and Bitcoin was to 2010, and equally as difficult to wrap your head around at first. Despite the initial say what moment when you learn of DAOs, and that stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, you will quickly discover that they are an exciting development that will only increase in popularity as we move further into Web3. However, before you run on and start your own DAO, there are some legal issues you need to consider regarding how to structure or wrap that DAO. First off, though, what are they? Let's have an overview. We'll get to those legal considerations in a minute, but first, let's get the groundwork and a very basic understanding of what DAOs are. So DAOs are a collectively owned and managed entity governed by rules written into the code of the organization through smart contracts. So algorithms that will run when specific criteria are met. As the rules are encoded into the code of the organization, no managers are needed, and the hierarchy of the organization can be flattened. And in place of the traditional leadership structures of corporations, DAOs issue tokens, and these tokens impart voting rights to the token holders. And all this is then baked into the blockchain. And so the only way that you can change the direction of a DAO is by these token holders having a vote. So instead of having a centralized management structure, the management, the control is really baked into the blockchain, and the organization moves and works based through a series of smart contracts. And then if a vote is needed, it's voted on by the token holders. So that's probably clear as mud. Well, the main things to remember are that DAOs have no central governance structure and are managed through smart contracts and token holders. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at a few of the legal considerations to keep in mind when setting up a DAO. And the big one here is, should I incorporate? And you may have noticed that in my description of a DAO, I did not refer to a DAO as an incorporated or legal entity. And the reason for this is that DAOs are often not incorporated. In fact, many DAO purists are vehemently against the idea of incorporating DAOs as it goes against the original spirit of DAO. That being an organization that is decentralized, autonomous, and not governed by a central management team. To these purists, the thought of incorporating a DAO and having corporate officers is heresy. For many DAOs, especially those that are internally focused and not engaged with the world beyond its members, it may be fine to exist with no legal wrapping. However, for the vast majority of DAOs, operating without any kind of legal wrapper could be problematic and open its members and founders up to unnecessary risks and personal liability. First, in most jurisdictions, DAOs are not recognized as legal entities and, as a result, cannot interact with the outside world. Accordingly, a DAO cannot enter into contracts with other entities or own non-tokenized assets. And so depending on the goal of the DAO, and certainly if it's externally focused, these issues are extremely problematic and are probably enough to force the DAO to seek some type of legal wrapping. Second, and for all DAOs, a major issue is that of legal disputes, both internally within the DAO and externally. And this is where, in my opinion, there's real benefit in having legal wrapping around a DAO. Internally, the structure of a DAO seems idyllic and free from strife. But when people are involved, and when, according to Cointelegraph, less than 1% of all holders have 90% of the voting power in DAOs, dissent is bound to arise. Externally, anytime an entity or organization is interacting with people or other organizations, there's a real potential for disputes. In both cases, a legal wrapping can help to protect a DAO and its members. Although jurisdictional differences will exist, in most cases, the legal incorporation of an entity, including a DAO, will protect its directors and members from personal liability, at least to a large extent. However, if no such legal wrapping is put in place, there's a real risk that not only could all the founders of the DAO be found personally liable in a legal dispute, but that, depending on how courts classify the DAO, i.e., is it considered a general partnership, all community members could potentially also be found personally liable. And so that's the real benefit of having that legal wrapping on a DAO, whether it's incorporation, whether it's looked at as a nonprofit entity. Speak to your local council about your options of how to wrap the DAO, because what you're doing is being proactive in preventing personal liability being found against founders, potentially members. And so just some final thoughts here. Obviously, the courts will have the final say in how liability should be apportioned with respect to a wrapperless DAO, one that doesn't have any legal protections. As such, and to make sure that you and your DAO are not the test case when it goes before the courts as to how risk and liability should be apportioned, speak to legal counsel about putting some type of legal structure around your DAO. This is a prudent preventative measure that I'd recommend for anyone looking to set up a DAO. And for the purists out there, I still think a DAO can have a legal wrapping and satisfy the spirit of DAO. Thought will have to be given to how the corporate officers can exercise their duties, what duties and powers they have. But I think the cost benefit of having corporate officers in some capacity, but having that legal wrapping to protect the members from liability, I think is worth it. So again, there's your introduction to what DAOs are, some legal considerations if you're thinking about setting one up, and I hope you enjoyed. Again, this article is for entertainment purposes only and is not financial or legal advice, and feel free to reach out to your local counsel if you're looking at setting up a DAO. Thank you very much.